I stepped onto the small stage at the local incubator, heart hammering against my ribs like it wanted out. My hands were slick with sweat. I clutched my laptop, trying to focus on the slides behind me, the graphs, the projections, everything I had poured months into. "This is it," I whispered to myself. "Just show them what you Seth got." I scanned the room. A few strangers nodded politely, taking notes. And then I saw them, Ravi, Neha, Samer, my so-called friends, my college peers, sitting together like a jury, smirking, waiting. I swallowed hard. Okay, here goes. I launched into my pitch. Imagine a platform that connects local artisans directly to customers, cutting out middlemen, empowering small businesses. "Wait," Ravi interrupted, leaning back, arms crossed. "Are you serious?" His laugh, low and slow, rippled across the table. I froze. "I am serious. This could really—" Neha cut me off, her voice dripping with mock sympathy. "Oh, honey, you actually think people will pay for handmade baskets online?" She laughed, a sharp, cruel bark that made my stomach knot. Samer slapped the table. "Look at him. He steps like a kid playing entrepreneur." I felt heat rise to my cheeks, my throat dry. I opened my mouth but no words came. My vision, my idea, reduced to punchlines. "You really thought you could start something? Alone?" Ravi leaned forward, eyes gleaming with amusement. "You, give me a break." I stumbled through the next slides, my voice shaky, each sentence swallowed by their laughter. Every number I presented, every potential I outlined, was met with snickers and rolling eyes. "You call this research?" Neha said. I could do this in my sleep. I could feel my chest tighten, like my ribs were constricting. My stomach churned. I wanted to disappear, vanish into the floor. And yet, I stayed. I had to finish. I, I believe in this," I managed, voice barely above a whisper, "and I know it can work if—" "Work? Ha," Samer barked, slapping his knee. "You start living in a fantasy world, man. Wake up." The laughter hit me like a punch. Each chuckle, each jeer burned through me. My hands shook. My vision blurred with hot shame. When I finally stepped off the stage, I couldn't meet anyone's eyes. My laptop bag felt heavier than ever, loaded with not just papers and slides, but humiliation. The echoes of their laughter followed me out into the empty corridor. I didn't go straight home. I walked aimlessly, kicking at trash cans, gripping the straps of my bag like a lifeline. My mind replayed every word, every smirk, every sharp laugh. "How could they?" I muttered. "Ravi, Neha, Samir, my friends, they actually enjoyed this." By the time I got home, my stomach was twisted into knots, my hands trembling. I threw my bag onto the couch and sank into it, head in my hands. My heart was still racing, but anger was creeping in, simmering beneath the shame. "They think this is the end?" I whispered to the empty room. "They think this is who I am." I replayed their faces over and over, like some cruel loop I couldn't pause. Ravi's smirk, Neha's mocking tilt of the head, Samer's loud, ridiculous laughter. It haunted me, and the more I saw it, the hotter the fire inside me burned. But buried under that humiliation, a tiny ember flickered, a thought fragile and dangerous. "They sup's wrong," I said quietly, almost to myself. "They don't sup know what I sup's capable of. They sup see, oh they sup see." I leaned back against the couch, staring at the ceiling. My hands were still shaking, but my mind was already racing, plotting. Each laugh I heard became fuel, each sneer became a step. I didn't know how yet, I didn't know when, but I knew one thing for certain: I would prove them wrong. And I would enjoy watching them realize it. The night stretched long and quiet, but my determination was loud. I closed my eyes and imagined the day they'd have to swallow their arrogance, the day they'd look at me and realize the joke was on them, and I smiled. I stopped answering my phone. I didn't reply to messages. I didn't go out. The world outside my apartment felt loud and cruel, and I had no armor left for it. "Abdul, dinner," my mom called one evening, voice tentative, soft. "I'm not hungry," I mumbled, not looking up from my laptop. My fingers flew over the keys, building lines of code like bricks in a wall around me. "Are you okay?" she asked again, stepping closer. I felt her shadow hover over me, but I didn't turn. I was instead okay, not even close. Later, Arjun, the only person who ever seemed to see through my quiet, knocked and walked in without waiting for an answer. His eyes scanned the room, sharp and patient. You've been absent, he said, voice careful. You've not just avoiding people, you've avoiding yourself. I shrugged. I have work. He crouched beside me. Work or hiding? Because hiding eats you from the inside. I wanted to snap at him. Wanted to say, you don't get it, but instead I closed my eyes and let a memory slip in, uninvited. Ravi? Neha? Samir, laughing at me on that stage. But before that, the whispers in school corridors. Weirdo? Dreamer, why even try? I remembered the times I raised my hand in class, voice shaking, only to be met with snickers. The time I told my mom I wanted to start something, and she said, Abdul, maybe aim lower. All those echoes had shaped me, twisted me, made me think I wasn't enough, not smart enough, not bold enough, not worth anyone's time. I remember, I muttered, almost to myself. Sep always remembered. Arjun Sep's hand rested lightly on my shoulder. Memory is one thing, action is another. You stir wasting years letting them haunt you. I wanted to argue. Instead I nodded. Maybe he was right, maybe this silence, this retreat was just my cocoon. I buried myself deeper into code, into research, into sketches and algorithms, and spreadsheets that no one would ever see, at least not yet. Every night, I sat under the dim light of my desk lamp, eyes dry, back aching. I mapped out every feature, every strategy, every loophole my competitors wouldn't anticipate. Every joke Ravi cracked, every mocking glance Neha threw, every snide comment Samer had made. I turned them into lessons. Why do you work like this? My dad asked one evening, peering over my shoulder. You look tired, hollow. I need to focus, I said simply, voice flat. Truth was, I was both numb and desperate. I didn't know which feeling would dominate first. You such are not sleeping enough, my mom said later, sitting beside me with a plate of untouched food. And you haven't smiled in weeks. What happened? I couldn't tell her. Not the humiliation, not the anger that simmered like lava under ice, not the obsession that had taken root in me. So I stayed silent, letting the walls of my room absorb my pain. Arjun returned one rainy evening. You can fight ghosts forever, Abdul. They still kill the present while you chase the past. They don't know, I whispered, watching the rain smear across the window. They don't know what I spam building. They think I spam broken. 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 Arjun tilted his head. And what if you fail? I met his gaze, dark and unflinching. Then at least I tried. But I once fail because I let them dictate my limits. Not this time. The nights became a rhythm. Sleep, code, eat, repeat. My friends' carefree lives were a background hum. I barely noticed, Ravi posting selfies at cafes, Samir bragging about another failed startup he'd abandoned, Neha laughing over brunch with strangers. And I built, in silence. In secrecy. Every line of code, every diagram, every mock-up was a step toward the moment I'd reclaim everything they mocked me for. I wasn't just angry anymore. I was deliberate, calculated. Every move I made had to be precise. Revenge, I realized, could never be impulsive. It had to strike at the perfect moment when I was strongest. And they were unsuspecting. My reflection in the dark window stared back at me. Eyes sunken, skin pale. But there was a fire in them now. Cold, controlled, deadly patient. They all see me, I whispered. All of them. Every laugh, every insult, they all see. And as the rain drummed against the glass, I let myself imagine it. Ravi's shock. Neha's disbelief. Samer's anger. The world would watch them realize that the boy they mocked in silence had grown into a storm they couldn't escape. I closed my laptop, fingers still trembling. Exhaustion clung to me like a second skin. Yet I couldn't rest, not fully, not yet. Every scar, every memory, every silent wound had a purpose now. They were my blueprint, my motivation, my map. And I would follow it to the end. Because in this silence, in this isolation, I was no longer just hurt. I was dangerous. And they had no idea. Months passed. I didn't notice them at first. My world was lines of code, late-night coffees, and spreadsheets that stretched across my tiny apartment like battle maps. And then it happened. Abdul, congratulations, Arjun said over the phone, voice steady but with that rare hint of pride. You Sev got an angel on board. That's Seb's real money, real validation. I let out a breath I didn't realize I'd been holding. Yeah, it's happening, I said, almost whispering it to myself. The words felt foreign and sweet. Validation I hadn't dared to imagine. I hung up and stared at my laptop. The screen glowed with projections, investor details, emails that promised the first real push for my dream. My fingers hovered over the keyboard. I wanted to type. I wanted to celebrate. But instead, I smiled quietly, letting the satisfaction settle like ice in my veins. Later I heard through a mutual friend. Ravi had ended up at some insurance desk job. Monotony had eaten him alive. He posted pictures at the office, fake smiles plastered over exhaustion. Nisa was freelancing. Creative instability, my source said. She bounced from client to client, always chasing the next paycheck, struggling, uncertain. Samer? Still starting ventures that failed before launch. Every pitch rejected. Every plan crumbled. I leaned back in my chair. The news didn't make me gloat. Not yet. It was quieter, darker, cold. Satisfaction wrapped around me. A small, powerful spark. They think they Sib won, I muttered to myself. They think I Sib'd still that scared kid, but I Sib'd not. I imagined their faces, Ravi's smirk that had haunted me. Neha's mocking tilt of the head, Samer's loud, ridiculous laughter. And now, I had them in a quiet way I'd never had before. Their comfort, their confidence, fractured, I whispered, and they have no idea. The spark grew as I traced out my next steps. Not just building a company, not just proving them wrong, I had to make them face me. On my terms, every line of code, every strategy, every partnership I forged, it became a part of the plan. One evening, alone, I said it aloud. I one step just succeed, I shall make them see me. Really see me. And when they do, it'll be too late. The thought was intoxicating. Precise. Perfect. I didn't need explosions or confrontations. Just timing, patience, control. Months of silent work became a rhythm. Investors, clients, prototypes, all moving forward, all building the ladder I'd climb while they stumbled. And every stumble they made, every post of frustration I glimpsed, added fuel to the fire inside me. I wasn't bitter, not in the way people expected. I wasn't consumed by anger. I was deliberate, calculating. Each spark of their struggle sharpened my focus. One night, I sat with my plans spread across the desk, mapping connections, partnerships, launches, a diagram of my strategy. And in the margins, I wrote their names: Ravi, Neha, Samer, each a marker, a reminder, not hatred, not revenge for revenge's sake. Precision, justice, karma. Soon, I whispered, soon, they shall see the boy they laughed at is the man they underestimated. The thrill wasn't loud. It wasn't flashy. It was quiet, simmering, a slow burn that made every decision deliberate, every action deliberate. I imagined the first time we'd meet again after my growth. Their shock, the disbelief, the hesitation, that first spark of fear when they realized I had changed the rules. I closed my laptop. The glow faded, leaving my apartment in soft darkness. The spark was still there, glowing under my skin. I could feel it pulse, quiet, constant, deadly. I poured myself a glass of water, staring at the reflection in the window. My face looked tired, but the eyes were different. Cold, calculating, alive. They don't set know what sep's coming, I whispered, and I shall make sure they never forget it. The spark had grown into a small flame, not yet a fire, but soon it would engulf everything they had taken for granted. And I would be standing, not just victorious but in control. And in that moment, alone, I smiled, not a smile of malice, a smile of certainty. The first spark had become a promise that the tables were about to turn. The launch night felt unreal. Lights, cameras, people buzzing with excitement. My app, my creation, was finally live. Users were raving, press inquiries rolled in, every notification pinged like a victory drum. And then I saw them. Ravi, Neha, Samer, their faces sneaked in through the crowd like uninvited ghosts. I felt a flicker of something sharp in my chest. Recognition, Satisfaction? I couldn't tell. Ravi's jaw tightened. Niha's eyes darted around, trying not to look impressed. Summer he wore that arrogant smirk that had haunted me for years. I walked over, calm, smiling politely. You came. Nisaft's laugh was nervous. We thought we set to see what all the fuss is about. Ravi crossed his arms. Yeah, looks like everyone sits losing their minds over a beta app. Exciting stuff. I let the words roll off me. Inside a different story. My heartbeat didn't falter. My smile never wavered. I stim glad you still are here. Actually, why don't Stu stick around? They exchanged glances. Confusion flickered over their features. Stick around? Samir asked. Eyebrows raised. Yes, I said. Voice calm, almost too calm. A STEM looking for interns. You three could use some guidance. You Semple report directly to me. Their expressions froze. Neha swallowed. Avi's smirk faltered. Samir's jaw tightened, teeth pressing together. We don't it. Ravi started. You don't have a choice, I interrupted softly. It steps an opportunity, and opportunities are rare. They didn't argue further. Not really, not when the press was still snapping photos, when investors were circulating, when the crowd was buzzing with energy. They came in, silent, eyes flicking to me, calculating. The first day was delicious. Neha sat at a desk, her fingers clumsy over spreadsheets. I can't figure this out, she muttered. I crouched beside her. Let's go step by step. You see this column? Enter the data exactly like this. Accuracy matters. Her hands trembled. She hadn't realized precision was required. She glanced up, shame creeping into her eyes. Ravi struggled with task delegation. I don't get why you want it done this way, he said, tone defensive. I leaned back, arms crossed. Because it works. You don't get to question the process. You follow it, and maybe you learn something. Samir tried to mask it at first, tried to assert his old dominance, but by day 3, even he realized the rules had changed. Pride had made him vulnerable. Instructions weren't suggestions, mistakes were not tolerated. Every slip was recorded, every hesitation noted. I watched them, quiet, calculating. No raised voices, no public humiliation, just silent observation, subtle guidance, reminders that the power dynamic had shifted. Neha groaned as she corrected a mistake in the database. I thought, this was supposed to be easy. I smiled. Nothing worth doing is easy. Ravi muttered under his breath, clearly frustrated. This isn't what I signed up for. You signed up for growth, I said, calm. You just didn't you be learning from me. Samir's arrogance crumbled over the next week. He had always been fast, flashy, sure of himself. But speed without understanding didn't last. And I had designed tasks to exploit exactly that, forcing him to slow down, to follow, to obey. He hated it, but he complied. And every time they struggled, I felt the quiet thrill of justice, not cruelty for cruelty's sake, not vengeance that screamed, just control. Silence. Power. The tables had turned. One evening, alone in my office, I replayed their faces from the first day. Nisa biting her lip, frustrated, Ravi's shoulders slumping, Samir's eyes narrowing, trying to mask defeat. I whispered to myself, this is only the beginning. The press coverage only amplified it. Investors praised the launch, users downloaded and raved. The app grew faster than I expected. Meanwhile, the three of them, once my mockers, were trapped in roles they never imagined, reporting to me, following instructions, realizing slowly that I was no longer that timid, easily dismissed kid. Even in their silence, I could feel it. They were aware, subtle looks, fleeting glances. They noticed, and I noticed them noticing. That awareness was more satisfying than any applause. Do you see now? I murmured quietly one night, staring at my reflection in the monitor. The boy you mocked is running the game. I didn't gloat openly, not yet. My satisfaction was quiet, controlled. It pulsed in my chest, sharp and steady, like a metronome of retribution. This was the first real taste of power, the first tangible victory that wasn't just about success, but about the balance finally tipping in my favor. And I savored it, slowly, deliberately. Because every challenge I set for them, every failure they experienced under my guidance, every subtle humiliation, they were reminders. reminders that I had risen, that the boy they laughed at had grown into someone they couldn't dismiss. I leaned back, sipping my coffee, watching the three of them struggle quietly. Nisad's cheeks flushed. Revi muttered to himself. Samir stared at the screen, pride crumbling. And in the soft hum of my office, I smiled. Silently, imperceptibly, the tables had turned. I noticed it first in Niha, the way her fingers hesitated over the keyboard, the small frown that never used to be there. She bit her lip, glanced at me and then muttered under her breath. I can do this. You can, I said, calm. You just have to focus. She swallowed, cheeks flushing. Focus right. Got it. Ravi's change was subtler. He used to project confidence, loud, impossible to ignore. Now every instruction I gave made him pause. He'd grunt, nod, mutter. Okay, okay, like a student repeating a lesson, and then quietly fume in his corner. Samir was the hardest to watch. Pride had been his shield, flashy, brash, untouchable. And now? Now he struggled to finish tasks, eyes flicking nervously to me with every error. I caught him whispering under his breath once, muttering something like, why is he so precise? It wasn't malicious, it wasn't violent, but the power shift was palpable. I could feel it in the air. The arrogance that had once made them untouchable was melting away, replaced with something brittle, something vulnerable. One afternoon, I walked past them, pretending to check a report, and overheard it. Ravi, whispering, I can believe she messed that up again, and Niha, she seps useless with the numbers. Niha, snapping back look at me. You think you stir better, but your task yesterday was a mess. Samir messed up too. Samir, shaking his head. You guys they're not used to this. Following him, obeying, it seps humiliating. I leaned against the doorframe, silent. A slow smile curved my lips. The three of them, once united in mockery against me, were now fracturing under their own stress, their own pride. Karmic justice, I thought. Beautifully quiet, painfully precise. And yet, even as satisfaction washed over me, doubt crept in. I closed my office door later, staring at my reflection in the glass. My hands shook slightly, not from fear, but from intensity. Am I becoming them? I whispered. The arrogance, the control, the quiet cruelty. I gripped the edge of the desk. The line between justice and malice blurred. I wanted them to understand, to feel, to recognize the power shift. But, did that make me any less human? Any less flawed? I poured myself a cup of coffee, the bitter taste grounding me. No, I muttered. I septum not. I septum balancing the scales. That septum's all. This is poetic justice. And still I watched, carefully. Niha broke down one morning. I can get these reports right. Her voice quivered, barely audible. Sorry, 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 sits, please. I crouched beside her. It stup's okay. You still get it. But you have to learn, not beg. Begging doesn't fix mistakes. Learning does. Her head drooped. She nodded, lips trembling. Ravi slammed a folder onto the desk later that day. I don't get why this matters so much to you. You stared, relentless. I smiled. Small, sharp. I care because it matters. You cared when you mocked me. Didn't set you. About your image, your superiority, now you understand what effort feels like. Samir tried to maintain a smirk, a shield, but it cracked. His voice was quieter, controlled. I thought I knew how to win to dominate, and I was wrong. I leaned back, observing them. The masks were falling. The arrogance, the unity they'd once flaunted was dissolving. Fear, doubt, desperation, quiet but intense, was replacing it. And I felt it. A cold, calculated thrill. Satisfaction that was almost artistic. Every struggle, every muttered complaint, every whispered frustration was a brushstroke in the painting of justice I had been waiting years to create. Yet, in the quiet moments, alone, I confronted myself. I didn't relish cruelty for its own sake. I didn't enjoy humiliation purely as entertainment. It was the balance I sought, the correction of years of mockery, disbelief, and scorn. And still, a part of me shivered, a warning. The shadow of the person I used to despise lurked somewhere inside. But then I remembered the laughter on that stage, The mockery, the disbelief, the faces of my friends, the people who had dismissed me completely. And I told myself firmly, softly, no, this is justice. This is equilibrium. This is the world righting itself. I returned to my office chair, eyes scanning their workstations. Nene typing slowly, precise. Ravi reading instructions twice, carefully. Samer reviewing his work, correcting errors meticulously. Good, I murmured. Quietly, keep learning, keep growing, keep breaking. I didn't say it aloud. Didn't need to. They were learning it themselves, and that was far more satisfying than any shout or confrontation. The power was quiet, subtle, palpable, a lesson delivered without words, and I finally could lean back, let the tension settle, and realize the masks had fallen. The boy they mocked, the one they laughed at, had returned, stronger, wiser, and for the first time, fully in control. And the world, my world, had shifted. It started with Nihei. I caught her in the middle of a subtle maneuver, changing a line of code, attempting to redirect user flow to make my startup look sloppy. I leaned against the doorway, arms crossed, heart calm but eyes sharp. Niha, I said, just her name. No question, no accusation. She froze. I was just trying to undermine me, I finished for her. Right? Her mouth opened, closed, opened again. I accepts nothing. I thought it would help. Help? I repeated, voice low, deliberate. Help whom? Yourself? Samer? Ravi? Or the girl who laughed at me years ago? Her eyes flickered. A memory slipped unbidden into my mind. The stage, the laughter, the mockery. You laughed at me, I whispered, leaning closer. You thought I spid never build anything. And now, you try to sabotage it. Why? Tears pricked her eyes. I don't stet know. I let silence stretch. Let her feel it. Let her understand the weight of her actions, mirrored back at her with precision. You suppear not helping anyone, I said finally. Not yourself, not anyone. You suppear just showing that your arrogance has not changed, except now, it's sups obvious to everyone. Her head bowed. I sup sorry. The next day, Ravi tried a different approach. Charm, familiarity. Abdul. Hey. I was thinking maybe we could, get back to how we were. Friends. You don't need to be so harsh. I leaned back in my chair, steepling my fingers. Friends? I asked. You laughed at me. On that stage. Remember? Ravi Sep's face flickered. Regret, discomfort. The first cracks in his practiced bravado. I didn't set mean. Didn't set mean? I cut him off. Voice sharp. You mocked my vision, my effort, my dreams, and you such worried about 30 friends. Stit, you can set charm your way out of that. He swallowed, eyes flicking down at the desk. I thought we could move past it. I don't set move past betrayal, I said slowly. I move forward, and you set part of the past. But I wanted you to see it clearly. Every laugh you threw, every sneer, it brought you here. To me, directing your every step. Ravi's shoulders slumped. I let the silence linger. It was heavier than any shout could ever be. Samer was the last. His plan was subtle, shortcuts, ethical lines he tried to blur. Abdul, listen, we can tweak the system. Just a minor adjustment. No one will notice. I didn't rise. I didn't shout. I just looked at him. The memory of his smug grin, years ago, echoed in my mind. Minor adjustment? I asked. Voice calm. Dangerous, minor adjustment that could ruin everything I built. Really? He hesitated. Pride faltered. Well, I just thought that you could outsmart me? That shortcuts could save you? I stood walking slowly around my desk, every word deliberate. You mocked me once, you underestimated me, and now you think you can bend the rules and gain the advantage. But you you stir too late. His eyes widened. I let the silence crush him, let the shame settle. Everything you were proud of, the arrogance you wielded, its sups brought you here, vulnerable, desperate, and now you realize, the boy you laughed at controls everything. Samer swallowed hard, voice barely audible. I see that now. Yes, I whispered. You see it, and I hope it hurts. Just enough to remember, the day you mocked me, the day you thought me weak, that day created this moment. Your panic, your failures, your helplessness, all poetic balance. And it sups beautiful. I let them sit with it. One by one their faces crumpled. Shame, guilt, regret. And I watched, quiet, savoring the subtle victories that didn't need loud triumphs or public humiliation. Each confrontation left a mark, on them and on me. I wasn't screaming, I wasn't cruel for cruelty's sake. I was precise. Surgical. Every word a reminder of the past. Every pause a mirror of the laughter they had cast at me. After the last confrontation, I sat alone in my office, staring at my reflection. My chest was tight, my hands shaking slightly, not from fear, but from intensity. Am I whispered softly, becoming them? I shook my head. No. Not cruelty. Not arrogance. Not ignorance. This was balance. Justice. The world righting itself. I thought of the stage, the laughter, the mockery, the humiliation I had felt. The nights I had spent building, learning, growing silently, and now, I was here, and they were here, and the scales had shifted. A small, cold smile curved my lips. This is poetic, I murmured. Not vengeance, balance, justice. I leaned back, letting the quiet satisfaction pulse through me. Their masks had fallen. Their pride had cracked. Their desperation was palpable. And I had delivered it with precision. And the world finally felt right. The conference hall buzzed with energy. Lights glinted off the stage. Investors, journalists, entrepreneurs, faces full of expectation. I adjusted the lapel mic and took a deep breath. This journey, I began, voice steady, carrying over the murmurs, isn't just about technology. It's about lessons. Lessons from mistakes. Lessons from doubt. Lessons from betrayal. I let the pause hang. Let the words settle like a slow drum beat. I didn't point fingers. I didn't name names. But I didn't need to. The room leaned in. I could feel it. The curiosity, the anticipation, the unspoken question, what betrayal? I said learned, I continued, pacing slowly, that not everyone who critiques you wants to see you grow. Some mock, some dismiss, some laugh, and that can teach you more than praise ever could. Eyes scanned the audience. Some nodded knowingly. Investors scribbled notes, and in the crowd I caught glimpses of them. Ravi Naha, Samer, faces tight, uneasy, pride shrinking under the weight of subtle implication. I smiled, calm, deliberate. The truth is, resilience is forged in those quiet moments of disbelief. When people tell you you'll never make it. When people laugh at your vision. When people underestimate your drive. I clicked the remote. The presentation flickered to life. Graphs, stats, screenshots of our user growth. Testimonials, partnerships, all undeniable evidence of progress. This, I said, gesturing toward the screen, is what happens when determination meets precision, when passion meets preparation, and when vision is unshakable. I could feel the tension tighten, the subtle glances, the murmurs, mutual acquaintances in the audience, quietly piecing it together. They were watching the contrast, the triumph before them, versus the struggles they had glimpsed from my mockers. Ravi leaned toward Neha, whispering, "We didn't expect this." Neha Sep's lips pressed together, eyes flicking nervously to the stage. I know. Samer's hands tightened around the notepad he'd been scribbling on. Pride had evaporated. Control had slipped away. They were present physically, but mentally, they were collapsing, quietly, internally. I didn't humiliate them. I didn't need to. My words, my presentation, my success, it did the work. Subtle, strategic, psychological. The revenge was in the realization, in their pride being stripped slowly, painfully, in public yet invisible to anyone who didn't know their history. I paused for effect, letting silence act as a hammer, then continued, softer now, but piercing. Sometimes, I said, the people who doubted you most end up seeking guidance from the very person they underestimated. It's ironic, and yet it's inevitable if your work speaks louder than words ever could. I scanned the room, investors nodding, entrepreneurs whispering to one another, and in the corner, their faces tight, strained, aware, I saw it. The moment they recognized the scales had shifted completely. The past, the mockery, the laughter, it had returned. Not as rage, not as revenge screams, but as quiet, undeniable truth. Ravi approached me afterward. Hesitant. Abdul, I was wondering if, maybe you could advise me on a project. I let the words land. Let them carry their own weight. Neha followed, voice trembling. I, I set appreciate guidance. Networking help. Samer Sip's pride had crumbled fully. I could use your insight if you have time. I smiled, polite, measured, not malicious, not indulgent, just calm. Of course, we sell talk, but understand this, everything you feel now, every pang of realization, it comes from choices you made years ago. The disrespect, the laughter, the doubt, that seps the lesson. They nodded, swallowing hard. The weight of pride lost of arrogance confronted quietly, hung between us. They were humbled, not humiliated by me, but by truth. And that was far more satisfying than any public spectacle. I turned back to the audience, picking up my keynote seamlessly. Innovation isn't just about software or algorithms, it's about understanding people, challenges, and yourself. It's about taking criticism, pain, and mockery, and converting it into fuel. That's how real growth happens. That's how real leadership is forged. Click, the final slide. A soaring user growth chart. Testimonials. Awards. Recognition. The room erupted in polite applause. I let it wash over me. Warmth. Triumph. Satisfaction. I glanced at Ravi, Neha, Samir one last time. They approached cautiously now, seeking approval they once denied. Quietly, subtly, the universe had balanced itself. I didn't gloat. I didn't jeer. I just acknowledged. Calm, controlled. Victory tasted sweetest when it was silent, self-earned, undeniable. Later, alone backstage, I let out a breath I hadn't realized I'd held. Finally, I whispered to myself. The tables turned, the lesson delivered. The justice, quiet, perfect, and complete. I stepped into the bright lights of the conference hall, applause washing over me, and felt it, pure, unspoken satisfaction. The boy they mocked was gone. The man they underestimated stood fully revealed, and the world at last had witnessed the rise without spectacle, without vengeance screamed, only earned, only realized. The public reveal was more than a launch. It was equilibrium. And I had achieved it. I sit in my office, the city lights stretching beneath me like a river of possibilities. The conference is over. The launches are over. The mockery, the fear, the uncertainty, they're all behind me, and yet, the echoes of that laughter from years ago still linger, not as pain, not as shame, but as a quiet reminder of what I overcame. I lean back in my chair and think of the journey, the nights I coded alone, the humiliation, the isolation, the endless questions I asked myself. Am I enough? Will I ever matter? Now I answer them silently. I am more than enough. I am unstoppable. The interns arrive, fresh faces full of ambition and hope. Some remind me of myself, eyes wide, heart pounding with dreams, yet untested by the world. Abdul, I've been thinking about the user interface for the new app update, says one young voice, eager but nervous. Good, I reply, keeping my tone encouraging but firm. Explain your idea. They stumble through their explanation, nervous at first, then gain confidence. I listen carefully, interrupting only to ask the sharp questions I wish someone had asked me when I was their age. This is where mistakes can teach you more than success ever could, I say, letting them feel the weight of their choices. Every line of code, every design decision, it matters. Dawn set rush. Dawn set settle. Learn. And I see it, the same spark I felt when I first started my journey. The hunger, the curiosity, the fire. Later I walk past the workstations of Ravi, Neha, and Samer. They've changed, not completely. Old habits die slowly, but they're learning. Every mistake they make, every corrected error, is a lesson. Every struggle is humility being forged. Nisia looks up from her screen. Abdul, can you check my data flow logic? I think ICEP's missing something. I nod. Show me. She explains carefully, fingers trembling slightly. I point out a subtle optimization. She nods, absorbing it, pride mixed with embarrassment. Thank you, she whispers. You sir, welcome, I say quietly. Learning is never shameful. Stagnation is. Ravi approaches later, more tentative than ever before. I wanted to ask about the marketing strategy for the next quarter, he says. There's a vulnerability in his voice, a quiet acknowledgement of past mistakes. Sit down, I reply. Let Stitz go through it. We dive into brainstorming, and I guide him subtly, letting him take ownership of ideas while ensuring they're aligned with strategy. He fumbles, hesitates, but grows more confident with each suggestion. I see humility starting to blend with competence. Samer lurks near the edge of the room, watching, listening. Finally, he speaks up. Abdul, is it okay if I propose a new coding framework for the app? I think it could speed up processing. I raise an eyebrow, letting the memory of his past arrogance flicker for a moment. Then I smile. Of course. Present it carefully, explain the benefits and the risks. And remember, shortcuts aren't sipped clever, they sipped dangerous. He nods, swallowing, and starts detailing his ideas, pride tempered with caution. Progress. I watch them, and a strange mix of emotions flows through me. Satisfaction. Yes. But deeper than that, empowerment, relief. A sense that the world has finally aligned with what it should have been all along. My pain, my scars, my sleepless nights. They weren't wasted. They were fuel. I wander to the window, staring down at the streets below. The city hums with life. I hear a soft knock behind me. Abdul? One of the younger interns asks. Can we ask you something personal? I turn, curious. Go ahead. How? How did you keep going when everyone doubted you? When people laughed at you? I smile faintly, letting a memory flash, the incubator stage, their mocking faces, the heat of humiliation burning in my chest. I used it, I say finally. The pain, the doubt, the laughter, I used it as fuel. Every time someone said I stepped fail, I reminded myself that their disbelief doesn't define me. My actions define me. My choices define me. They nod, absorbing the lesson. I see in their eyes what I once had, the hunger, the hope, the drive to rise above. Later I check in on Ravi, Neha, Samir again. They've contributed significantly to the latest project. Their faces are serious, focused, and yet there's something different now. Awareness, humility, respect. They're under my wing, yes, but no longer my adversaries. They are part of the system I built, learning the balance I've mastered. Neha whispers, I didn't realize how much I underestimated you. You did instead. I reply, now you do. That steps the difference between knowing and learning. Ravi adds, quietly, it steps humbling and motivating. Samer simply nods, words unnecessary, the growth is visible, undeniable. I sit back in my chair and let a smile spread. Soft, quiet, not triumphant in the old sense. Not gloating, just balanced. The city lights reflect in my window. My empire isn't just numbers or apps. It's lessons learned. It's people growing. It's the quiet revenge I crafted with precision, now transformed into empowerment for others. I think of the past, the mockery, the laughter, and I let it settle, not as pain, but as proof of how far I've come. I am no longer the mocked dreamer. I am the reality check, the one who turned humiliation into strength, the one who rose above. And in that quiet, I feel it, the thrill of poetic justice mingled with true peace. The scars made me stronger, the pain propelled me higher, the laughter of others only strengthened my resolve. I look at my team, young and eager, learning from my journey, and whisper to myself, this is the legacy, not just revenge, not just success, growth, power, balance. The weight lifts, the past rests, the future stretches ahead, bright, demanding, unstoppable. And I smile, quietly, fully, because I have risen. A year has passed. I step onto the polished floors of the old incubator, the place where it all began, the laughter, the mockery, the humiliation. The echoes are faint now, replaced by the quiet hum of ambition. Startups pitching, young founders nervously rehearsing, mentors nodding, offering advice. I pause at the center of the room, letting the memories wash over me. I see the stage where they laughed. Ravi, Neha, Samer, faces twisted in mockery. I feel the old sting, but it's muted, transformed. The pain once sharp has become clarity, the fuel that carried me here. A small smile creeps onto my face. I've built more than a startup. I've built resilience. Vision, power shaped not by vengeance alone, but by focus. by relentless effort, by quiet determination. I catch sight of them in the corner, older, tempered, humbled. They glance up, recognize me. No words, no excuses, just a nod each. Respect. Silent acknowledgement of the journey they once doubted, and I nod back, returning the gesture. No gloating, no satisfaction shouted. Just recognition of what was, and what has become. I walk the corridors slowly, observing the energy around me. Young founders pitching, failing, learning. I stop and watch a group struggle with a code error. I lean in, whisper advice quietly. Check the logic here, don't rush. Every failure is a lesson. Their eyes widen, grateful, absorbing not just the solution but the lesson behind it. I see myself in them, the hunger, the doubt, the drive to rise. Later I sit in the small lounge, looking out the window at the skyline beyond. My startup thrives globally now. Users, investors, press, they all see the product, the vision, the results, and yet the satisfaction isn't in recognition or money. It's in knowing the journey, how scars became fuel, how ridicule became lessons, how pain became mastery. I think of Ravi, Neha, Samir. They learned humility. They grew under my guidance. They contribute now, quietly, productively, and I realize that revenge was never the goal. It was merely a lesson, a calibration of balance. What matters is growth. What matters is power tempered by wisdom. A voice in the lounge catches my attention. Abdul, it's Sep's impressive what you Sep done. I glance toward the young founder speaking. Thank you, I reply softly. Keep going. Keep learning. That Sep's the most important part. Alone again, I lean back in my chair. The scars remain, faint lines etched into memory and spirit. But they no longer sting. They remind me of how far I've come, how carefully I've shaped my path. How I turned the laughter, the mockery and the betrayal into something enduring. I close my eyes briefly and whisper, almost to myself, I am not the boy they mocked. I am the force they underestimated. And Sep learned, mastery comes from patience, resilience, and turning pain into power. I rise, walking toward the exit. The sunlight spills across the floors, warm, steady. Outside, the world waits. The next challenge, the next growth, and I step forward, unafraid, unshaken, unbroken. The journey isn't over, but closure has arrived. The scars remain, yes, but they are no longer wounds, they are lessons, and I have risen above.